Good evening, I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching World News Tonight. Diplomatic treason, that's the accusation brought by Poland's Commission for Investigating Russian Influence against the country's former Minister of Defense, Antoni Macierewicz. The Law and Justice Party official calls it a political witch hunt, attempted disinformation, and a lie. More on that in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. Pawe Szopa, creator of a nationalist themed fashion brand, is being extradited back to Poland. His company received huge subsidies under the previous government. The UN Security Council is meeting to discuss North Korean soldiers in Russia, and Kyiv announces a new wave of mobilization. The Warsaw Uprising Mount Park has been named Europe's best public space. The Polish State Commission investigating Russian and Belarusian influence in the country says former Defense Minister Antoni Macierewicz committed diplomatic treason. The commission has identified several instances in which the former minister allegedly weakened Poland's defense capabilities and undermined the country's position abroad only a few years before the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Kazimierz Łysiak reports.
The highly anticipated report of the Commission investigating Russian influence in Poland was finally revealed, at least in part, on Wednesday. Its findings contain some very serious allegations.
We found evidence of thwarting arms procurement for the Polish armed forces, an offense which we will recommend filing criminal charges for, as it could be considered diplomatic treason.
The Commission's head, General Jarosław Strużyk, who also serves as the chief of Poland's military counterintelligence service, identified 4 key areas in which the body found instances of malpractice by officials from the previous conservative administration of the Law and Justice Party. Apart from diplomatic treason, the Commission found evidence of Polish institutions and state-owned enterprises making shady deals with Kremlin-linked companies, meddling in the United States' internal affairs. It also pointed to the former government closing 10 field offices of the Internal Security Agency without proper justification and review. Finally, the Commission found that the Law and Justice Administration failed to react to early warnings from the United States of the impending Russian invasion of Ukraine. The Commission laid much of the blame at the feet of Antoni Macierewicz, who served as the defense minister between 2015 and 2018.
The Commission unanimously recommends passing all the gathered evidence to the Public Prosecutor's Office, pending a criminal investigation to former Defense Minister Antoni Macierewicz under Article 129 of the Criminal Code.
The strongest allegations against Macierewicz concern the undermining of Poland's defense capabilities, which could be considered diplomatic treason.
Diplomatic treason is one of the highest possible offences for a government official. If these allegations are confirmed in a criminal investigation, it would be like setting off a nuclear bomb.
According to the former general commander of the Polish armed forces, who resigned when Macierewicz served as defense chief, the former minister's sudden and unexpected decision to scrap the Karkonosze program was especially baffling. Named after a mountain range in Poland, the program was meant to procure aircraft capable of aerial refueling for the Polish Air Force.
Imagine that F-16s patrolling our skies wouldn't have to land. This would allow us to intercept any stray Russian missiles or foreign jets violating our airspace quickly and efficiently. It's an absolutely crucial capacity.
Antoni Macierewicz was dismissed by the Law and Justice Party itself from his position as defense minister in 2018. Immediately after, he was appointed the head of a subcommittee reinvestigating the 2010 Smolensk plane crash, which killed Polish President Lech Kaczyński and close to 100 passengers on board. For years, Macierewicz said the plane was blown up by an explosive device, a claim highly disputed by both domestic and international experts. When presenting his subcommittee's findings on Wednesday, Macierewicz dismissed the accusations against him.
These allegations are absurd. All of it is just propaganda. We'll see what evidence they'll give to the prosecution.
The head of the committee investigating Russian influence in Poland said that given the gravity of the situation and the accusations laid against former Defense Minister Antoni Macierewicz, the preparation of a motion to the prosecution to investigate the former Defense Minister could still take some time, perhaps several weeks. From Warsaw, TVP World, Kazimierz Łysiak.
The grip is tightening over those involved in scandals under Poland's previous ruling party, Law and Justice. Now, the owner of a patriotic clothing brand, Red is Bad, Paweł Szopa, is being extradited from the Dominican Republic to Poland, where he's set to face several serious charges. Piotr Miszczuk has more.
Support from incumbent President Andrzej Duda in the heat of the pandemic only boosted the company's sales. But this celebrity endorsement does not lie at the center of the ongoing investigation. It is the transfers totaling more than 100 million euros from the Polish government agency for strategic reserves that put the owner of the company in the spotlight.
Today, we do not yet know who recommended and what drove the signing of such unfavorable agreements for the state treasury. That is, in practice, for us, the citizens. But I hope that as a result of the prosecution's actions, we'll soon find out.
Politicians of the former ruling party allay these claims, pointing out that the whole affair is politically motivated. MP Paweł Szopa claims Justice Minister Adam Bodnar, who also serves as the general prosecutor, aims to target opposition politicians.
Another piece of political theater. I can only shrug my shoulders over it now and let down a veil of embarrassment. Minister Bodnar has made us accustomed to him being the director of political shows.
Some experts partly agree with the opposition, saying that Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk is sending a message to all who broke the law under the previous rule.
But I think it's not about politicizing all of it or generalizing it to the point of extreme or absurdity, but pointing to individual responsibilities in the letter of as it is in the letter of the law.
The scandal seems to be in keeping with the modus operandi of the former ruling party, Law and Justice, says TVP World expert Marcin Zaborowski.
There was obviously a practice in the past during the 8 years of Law and Justice government to award business friends, the entrepreneurs, with contracts which would be consistent with the ideological line of the ruling party.
And more people with ties to the previous ruling party are expected to face charges on various accounts of misuse of public funds.
These actions are absolutely unacceptable. Every last penny needs to be accounted for.
One such case is already in the pipeline. The investigation surrounding the Polish government agency for strategic reserves led to an arrest warrant for its former head, known as Michał K. He was detained in the UK on charges of overreach of authority to achieve financial gain and awarding profitable contracts to favoured businesses, which includes contracts covering protective equipment during the COVID pandemic and electric generators for Ukraine. The ex-top official is currently awaiting extradition from the UK. Once deported to Poland, he may face up to 10 years in prison.
At Ukraine's request, the UN Security Council is holding a meeting on the deployment of North Korean troops to fight in the war on Ukraine. Despite uncertainty over whether the soldiers have already reached the front lines, Kyiv has ordered a new wave of mobilization, and Seoul considers sending its troops to Ukraine as observers. Jeremy Hołodniuk reports.
The deployment of North Korean soldiers to Russia has caused consternation on the international stage. While South Korean Defense Minister Kim Jong-un arrived at the Pentagon to discuss a response to the presence of DPRK troops in Russia, North Korea's foreign minister traveled to Moscow for strategic consultations with her Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov. While there's uncertainty whether North Korean troops have already been deployed to the front lines, Seoul doesn't rule out this possibility.
The relationship between Russia and North Korea is fundamentally changing into a blood alliance, and in this process, the two countries are exchanging support to strengthen their mutual defense capabilities.
The fact that DPRK has dispatched its troops to Russia could mean that if there's an escalation on the Korean peninsula, the Russian military could intervene to help Pyongyang. a scenario that worries all.
South Korea has had a special relationship with Russia and has developed bilateral ties with Moscow through various diplomatic exchanges and cooperation as an allied nation. However, Russia is becoming a threat, not just as a neighboring country, but as a real threat to South Korea.
South Korea is now considering sending some of its troops to Ukraine as observers to analyze the expected deployment of North Korean soldiers. Meanwhile, questions are emerging about the combat readiness of Pyongyang's fighters.
While they were supposedly called the Special Operations Forces, there is certain facts. The facts are they were not properly trained in modern electronic warfare. The North Korea is also a very mountainous area, and this is not a battle taking place in the mountains.
For Kyiv, the situation is crystal clear. The war has entered a new stage, and it's time for the West to allow Ukraine to strike deep inside Russia with Western long-range weapons.
I think the North Korean soldier, this is escalation, not from our side, from the side of Russia.
In response to the ongoing challenges, Kyiv is also moving to recruit an additional 160,000 soldiers into its army. Authorities have noted that this mobilization would allow for 85% of military units to be fully staffed. In total, more than 1 million people have already been recruited into Ukraine's defense forces.
Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko is intensifying attempts to eliminate every last voice of dissent. Often labeled Europe's last dictator, he has ruled the Eastern European state with an iron fist since 1994. Now, with the next presidential election set for January 2025, he's taking no chances against his opponents. Zuzanna Jurek has more.
In an official memorandum issued earlier in the week, the Belarusian leader called on dissidents and former political prisoners to declare they will abstain from, quote, unconstitutional attempts to usurp the government. This marks a desperate attempt at destroying his domestic opposition.
The border crossing in Bobrovik was closed by the previous government for a very specific reason. The reason being the Polish response to the arrest of Andrzej Poczobut. When Poczobut is released, the border crossing will be reopened.
According to the human rights group Vyasna, around 1,300 political prisoners remain behind bars in Belarus, with many more sentenced in absentia. In response to the announcement, the widely popular opposition leader Svetlana Tikhanovskaya dismissed the upcoming election as a, quote, sham in a post on X.
Lukashenko has announced the date of his re-election, January 26th. It's a sham with no real electoral process, conducted in an atmosphere of terror. No alternative candidates or observers will be allowed. We call on Belarusians and the international community to reject this farce.
Tikhanovskaya's husband, a prominent opposition figure, is still in prison after being jailed ahead of the 2020 vote, when he announced his intent to run against Lukashenko. It is becoming increasingly apparent that Lukashenko's iron fist is slowly losing its grip. In 2020, the world watched in amazement as a wave of protests erupted across the country, calling for his resignation amidst allegations of ballot rigging.
Imagine the level of repression, but also the level of fear at the same time. It doesn't really it doesn't really show that Lukashenko sort of feels very confident. I think he's also scared of protest. Even the parliamentary elections that took place earlier this year showed us nobody expected really any dissent, any protests, but Lukashenko prepared for these elections as for some sort of a special operation.
Lukashenko's allies are also growing discontent with his inability to maintain power. In a highly surprising move, Russian President Vladimir Putin refused to send troops to contain the 2020 protests, claiming that the crisis should be resolved without, quote, foreign interference, offering a $1.5 billion loan in a gesture of symbolic support.
The interior ministers of Poland and Germany, Tomasz Siemoniak and Nancy Faeser, visited a border crossing between Poland and Belarus on Wednesday. Speaking to the press, both officials assured their commitment to securing the European Union's eastern border.
We will spare no expense to secure our border. We must defend our border with the united strength of the entire European Union. If this border is secure, the entire EU will be secure.
Our priority is to urgently establish a common European asylum system, because if it allows us, for example, to create conditions for the strict protection of EU borders, we can then lift checks on our internal borders.
Two reception centers built to receive migrants arriving in Italy have been opened in Albania. They were set up as part of an agreement between the two countries to curb illegal migration to the European Union. However, it seems that the process is not going according to plan. Don Arleth has visited one of these centers and has more.
Coming here to Albania to check out the asylum center set up by Italy here in the country has been quite an interesting experience. It is a very innovative solution. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said so herself, that this could be a trend set in dealing with the problem of irregular and illegal migration. But really interesting to get the take from Albanians on the issue. Do they have a problem with having migrants being housed in their country while their applications for asylum get processed in Italy? Are they afraid of perhaps more of these camps being set up? Well, actually, the answers would really surprise you. And one of the things that we heard was when Albania was in a similar situation and many Albanians were escaping the country back when the communist regime fell in 1992, well, many of them were getting on boats and sailing across the Adriatic to get to Italy, which is only a little bit more than 100 kilometers off the coast. And Italians were welcoming in at the same time. Therefore, Albanians feel, and the Prime Minister said so himself, that they are returning the favor. Now take a listen to the head of the village where we went, or Gjadar, where one of the migration centers is built and constructed. And here's his take on exactly what he thought and what the villagers think about this camp.
Before the camp was built, people were pessimistic, but when they saw the camp surrounded by high fences up to 8-9 meters, they felt depressed, thinking that even their own children in Europe must be surrounded in such conditions. They said, don't enclose them with bars, let these people be free, as they, too, are struggling for their livelihood and a better life in Europe.
So for this village where about 3,000 migrants are expected to be housed there, they see the situation quite differently than a lot of onlookers from the rest of Europe. For them here in Albania, it means jobs, it means opportunity, and it means returning a favor for somebody that helped the country earlier. Reporting from Tirana, Albania, Don Arleth, TVP World.
The Warsaw Uprising Mound Park has been named Europe's best public space. Once a pile of rubble, this public space gained a new life and international recognition quickly followed. Sonia Agata-Biszczan reports.
The Warsaw Uprising Mound has been awarded the European Prize for Public Space at a ceremony in Barcelona. Through the joint vision of architects and landscape architects from Archigrest and Toposcape, the space previously associated with the remains of Warsaw's wartime destruction was reimagined as both a memorial and natural recreational area.
This prize showed that we were right, that we can do something that is fresh, just because we used all that already was there. We accepted the all planting that were already there. We didn't cut down the invasive plants. We work with them. We work with the rubble. During the design process, we are really, really afraid how the people of Warsaw will see what we've done, because we tried to change as little as possible and at the same time show what this place is, what it was, what it is, and what it can be.
Despite the caution exhibited by the architects, it is apparent that visitors welcomed the reimagined park with open arms.
A park like this was much needed here because the nearest park is the Royal Baths. But I have a comparison with last year when this park opened and the vegetation is really spreading out in a natural way. It blends into the structure of the park. I love this park. I am really grateful that this place was rejuvenated. I live on the other side of the street. From the moment the park reopened, I've been here virtually every day. It is absolutely special because it is a combination of history with nature.
Considering the public's reactions, it is of little surprise that this project, skillfully combining memory, recreation, and environmental responsibility, all while reflecting Warsaw's post-war reconstruction, has received international recognition.
The highly anticipated report of the State Commission investigating Russian influence in Poland was unveiled on Wednesday by Commission head General Jarosław Strużyk. According to its findings, former Defense Minister Antoni Macierewicz committed diplomatic treason. To discuss the report and the accusations detailed inside, I'm joined by Jovanka Jakubek-Lalik, Associate Professor at the University of Warsaw. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the program.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So we've been looking at the report which the Commission was hard at work on since June of 2024. What is the weight of these allegations that were included in the report against Antoni Macierewicz, and what consequences do you think it will hold?
First of all, the work of the Commission is not finalized yet, so the head of the Commission estimates that only 20% of the overall material has been investigated so far. So we still need to wait for the final conclusions and for the further findings and possible accusations in the work of this Commission. But for the time being, I think the most serious accusation is about the diplomatic treason. So the act, the crime which is regulated in the Polish Penal Code.
If you don't mind me interrupting you, what is a diplomatic treason? Because for some of our international viewers, this might be a term that they might have not come across before.
The term diplomatic treason is regulated by the Penal Code, and it applies to the authorized persons, so people who are in powers, who are in the state functions, and who are committing crimes, or they are acting on behalf of the state, but to the detriment of the state. So this is when they can be accused of this crime, and this crime can be up to 10 years of imprisonment. So it is a serious allegation, serious accusation, and it needs, of course, to be defined and investigated properly by the State Prosecution's Office.
If charged, what are the consequences if charged with diplomatic treason?
Well, of course, if charged, the prosecutor's office needs to fully investigate any accusations, and then if the accusations should be confirmed, this case goes to the court, and then the court needs to decide whether this crime was committed or not, and then the consequence can be up to 10 years of imprisonment. Yes.
So the report is quite extensive, and as we've been reporting on it before, we've been pointing out certain points of the document. What are some of the most important ones? What are the biggest takeaways of that report as of now?
Well, as of now, I think the biggest takeaway is that there are some serious accusations that the state authorities in that period were acting not always on behalf of the state, actually. Yes, so the most important accusation is that in some cases the Minister of Defense at that time was not acting in the best interest of the Polish state. So, for example, he was not purchasing the necessary military equipment, and there were no proper justification of the refusal to actually provide this equipment to the Polish army.
Just like in case of the Karkonosze scheme.
The Karkonosze program, yes, so that is the most important aspect. So here there were supposed to be bought several tanker planes, so the aircrafts that could serve for F-16 fighters to be fueled in the air. So these kind of equipments was not bought in that period, and also there are some other accusations when it comes, for example, to the preparation of Poland for the repercussions, for the consequences of the Russian attack on Ukraine. So it was known to the secret services several months ahead of the attack. They were warned that this attack might happen, and Polish state was supposed to be properly prepared for the consequences consequences of such an attack, and apparently not all of the preparatory exercises were properly executed in that time, yes.
One name that keeps recurring in that report, and it's been brought not only by us here on TVP World, but different Polish media, is the former Defense Minister Antoni Macierewicz. He was fundamental when it came to shaping of the Smolensk plane crash committee, which later had an effect on the 2015 election results as well. Who is Macierewicz, and why is he such a polarizing figure when it comes to Polish politics?
Well, Antoni Macierewicz, as you mentioned, he is the former Minister of Defense, so very important function in the previous government. But before entering politics at the governmental level in the communist times, he was one of the leaders of the opposition against the communist government in 1970s. So he was an important opposition figure at that time. However, in recent years, he moved towards this right-wing political party, Law and Justice, and he is still one of the leaders of the party and a very important politician when it comes to topics of defense, of secret services, but also, as you mentioned, to investigate the Smolensk plane crash.
Is there anything that suggests that a former Defense Minister, Antoni Macierewicz, was actually complacent of the things that are being stated in the report? Do we have an actual smoking gun as of now?
Okay, so the role of the Commission was, again, not to finalize the procedure. The role of the Commission was to establish what kind of evidence there are that would support this kind of thesis. So they were supposed to establish this evidence, and because the evidence that was established is considered quite strong, now they are supposed to bring this case up to the prosecutor's office, and then the proper investigation with all the procedures should take place. And if the case should be deemed strong enough, it should then appear in the court.
Last but not least, one of the findings points in a direction of the Chancellery of the President of Poland, withholding information about Mr. Macierewicz. Polish President Andrzej Duda has criticized him before. This is something that we've seen happen in years past. And as we learned from the head of the National Security Bureau, Jacek Siwiera, he said that the Bureau did not allow the Commission, of whose report we're talking about, to access the documents because there were no legal basis. Do you think that there is a chance that the Chancellery, the Presidential Chancellery, actually knew something that they did not want to disclose?
Well, I have no knowledge about that. What I can say is that all the state authorities should cooperate in this kind of cases. And of course, should the Commission expect some evidence be brought from the President's Chancellery, they should receive it. So this is the, let's say, fundamental basis of cooperation between state authorities.
So as of now, what happens next?
Well, I think that the Commission will continue their work. As the head of the Commission explained, they only started the work 4.5 months ago, and still there is plenty of work ahead of them. So I think that we can expect further evidence or further explanations that will be made by this Commission, and we will see what will happen next. For sure, this kind of Commission is not going to disclose all the information, because the majority of the information that they are working on are classified. So they will not be able to explain everything openly to the public. However, it is very important to have this kind of procedure, investigation within the government body, which is the Chancellery of Prime Minister, to be able to actually see to what extent there are some potential dangers or dangers in the past that need to be investigated.
And I suppose based on legal repercussions, we're going to learn more about the findings in the report as well. And we here on TVP World will be here to report. Thank you so much, Jovanka Jakubek-Lalik, Associate Professor at the University of Warsaw. Thank you for joining. And so this would be all the latest news for now, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining, and please remember to stay tuned here on TVP World, as we will be bringing you more news and features.